All righty. Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's having a wonderful morning, depending on where you are time zone wise. I'm very excited for today because I've actually, the many years reading and researching SOG, I've both heard this name of our guest today and seen him all over the place in Jason's Hardy book. But of course, this photo was special enough to actually make the cover of Volume 4, which is the team history of RT Illinois, uh, Team Leloy out of FOB1, and several other SOG teams. And our guest today is Mr. Stephen Keever, codenamed Jade. He was, as I mentioned, with RT Illinois. He worked his way up to actually running the team as a 1-0 until he went over with Mr. John Plaster, Larry White, Lowell Stevens, and Shoebox Carpenter to be a Covey rider. So we're going to get a lot of special stories and got some good photos to show you guys today. And in case you're wanting to read and hear a little bit more on Mr. Steve after the fact, he is featured prominently in Mr. John Plaster's personal tour book, Secret Commandos Behind Enemy Lines with the Elite Warriors of SOG. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Mr. Steve, let him introduce himself and give a little background on his entry to the military, and we'll get started with Vietnam. Mr. Steve, thanks for joining us, and the floor is yours, sir.
Well, thanks for having me. It's an honor, and I greatly appreciate it. Up until just the other day, until I sent out a post on Twitter of a incident that I saw of your picture of something that I could relate to because I was there, and I put that out there. I didn't realize what a far-reaching far-reaching what word am I looking for? Area that you cover. You've got all kinds of people out there. It took almost no time at all for a couple of days to blow up my phone with people who all of a sudden wanted to follow me or listen to what I had to say. Amazing to me, but thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, sir. We're just honored to have you.
So,
Could you well, first off, people are always very interested, especially with the Vietnam veterans. Did you have any family members that served in the armed forces, or were you the first in your family to join?
my dad was a World War II vet. He was in the Army Air Corps stationed in the Pacific. But I didn't have, I had very few uncles and no other relatives that had gone into the Army or into the Marine Corps or Navy. I did have an uncle, I guess, that was in the Navy back probably the Korean War time and a little bit after that, but no immediate family. I had I had really had no intention when I graduated high school in 1968, and my parents, they didn't have an education, they didn't have any money, and but they wanted. I'm the oldest of four, so they wanted their son to go to college, get an education, and do better than they did. Kind of the American dream type thing.
Oh, hope we didn't lose him. Oh, let's see. Uh-oh. Let's see, Mr. Steve, can you still hear me? Um, Bear with it. Oh, dang, it's frozen up on us. Let's see. It may have some service issues. We'll see here in just a second. we'll see here. Hang on one second. We'll give him a minute. He may have to reboot and come back in because it looks like it's completely frozen up on us at the moment. Let's see here. Heck, while we're sitting around, I'll show a photo or two while we're trying to get Mr. Steve back on. There's Mr. Steve right there with his Buddha amulet. We've got some great photos to show today. I hope we can get his computer working because he's got some great stories. Yeah, guys, I hope so too. I got completely rocked in jiu-jitsu and landed right on my head and my shoulder, and then somebody landed right on top of me, and I immediately knew something was wrong and had to get up and leave, and made it through the night barely and got up and went to the doctor, and yeah, it's busted pretty good. Well, I can see it's trying to do something. His microphone is muted. Let me see it. He's trying to call me. Ah, God. And guys, if worse comes to worse, we will, oh, here he is.
Got it.
There you are, sir.
I have no idea what happened there.
It's fine. I forgot where we lost you at. Talking about family and military, and then your parents wanting you to join.
Well, I went to. I enrolled in college, and I had my books bought. I had my schedule. I had housing. I had everything. I was just waiting for the first day of school to start. And I'm on another issue. I'm hearing the echo now. Is that supposed to be like that?
Or? Can you hear it on your end, or just?
Yeah, I can hear it on my end.
But let me see if I can clear it. Let's see. Did that stop any of it?
Well, yeah, I think it did.
Okay.
So, sorry for being so technologically challenged.
It's fine. We have problems all the time, but on my end and guest end, it's fine.
Okay. Well, I had a friend of mine who, right before school started, he said, "Hey, I'm going to go to this seminar tonight. Do you want to go?" And I said, "Okay." So I walked into this library, and here was a guy dressed in a Class A uniform, medals, ribbons, stripes, badges, green beret, spit shine jump boots. I thought, this is the coolest dude I ever seen in my life. So I listened to his talk, and he talked about how, the Vietnamese were perpetrating atrocities against the Montagnards and Vietnamese and everything else. And so I said, I think this is something I want to do. I didn't really have a passion for what I wanted to do in college. I just figured once I got there, I'd figure something out. So I went and saw a recruiter and enlisted. And when the first day of school came around, I put my stuff in my car and I drove down to campus, and I spent a couple of days, and I came back home, and my mom said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "You better sit down. I got something I want to tell you." And of course, that didn't set very well with her, and she was crying and said, "Well, what about school?" And I said, "Don't worry about it. I'll just go when I get back." Yeah, this is 1968, probably the highest casualty rate of the war. But anyway, I just knew at that time that that's what I had to do. So I ended up going to Fort Campbell for basic. I went to infantry AIT at Fort Gordon, Georgia, and then I went to jump school. And then I had, when I talked to the recruiter, I wanted to know what I had to do to, volunteer for Special Forces. Early on, Special Forces, in order to get in, you had to be on like your second enlistment or something. I said, well, I didn't want to do that. If I had to do that, hell, Vietnam War would be over. And so anyway, I took the tests and went and got through training group, and they assigned me a commo MOS, so I went through commo training with the Morse code, phase 2, and then a lot of the classes ahead of us had put in for a 5th group, and they weren't getting it. Or not many of them were getting it. They were being assigned to the 6th or 7th or 3rd at Bragg, or sometimes the 10th, and maybe on rare occasion to the 1st in Okinawa. But a number of us had put in for the 5th, and lo and behold, we all got it. So we all ended up basically going over together.
Were some of these guys, would you end up seeing some other guys from training group in SOG?
Oh, yeah. Well, when we were at Cameron Bay when we got in there, and we ran across a guy. He had a beret on. Of course, we had berets on, so we got together, and he was telling us that CCC was the place to go. And if you want action, that's the place to go. Run recon, and you'll have plenty of activity to talk about. So, when we went to Nha Trang, and we were talking to the first sergeant or whoever it was in charge of assigning us, and a group of us standing there, and I think my assignment initially was to an A camp somewhere. I don't remember what the number was. I said, I don't want to go there. What do I have to do to go to CCC? And the guy looked at me like, what, are you nut? And Dan Ross, who I'd gone through, I met Dan in AIT. We went to jump school and SF training, commo training, went over there together, and he looked at me, he says, are you effing nuts? Didn't you hear what he said last night? And I said, that's all right. You don't have to go. I'll go. There he is. And, you can go wherever you want to go. Well, as it turned out, Dan Ross and Jim Nunn and Lynn Moss and Gary Harnett and myself all went to CCC. Wow. And Bucky Ramsey came up there later on. They didn't let him go initially because he had a crypto MOS, so they made him sit in a bunker and do classified stuff for a while before he aggravated the hell out of them. And they finally says, you need to go somewhere else. He said, well, send me to CCC. That's where all my friends are. So he ended up up there a few months later. But yeah, we were all together. Now Ross came home after his first year. Unfortunately, Gary Harnett, he went down with RT Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. But Nunn and Moss and I all extended together. And so we were all together there for the 19 months we were in there. Nunn was actually there a little longer because he had contracted malaria. So they had to get him over that malaria before they sent him home.
All big names in CCC history. We've got, as a matter of fact, we've got some of the photos of you with some of the guys you mentioned that we'll bring up later. With Mr. Lynn Moss especially, there's a few good ones of you two together. He was he was on quite a few big teams. I think Ohio. I know RT Montana with Mike Shepard for a while. He seemed to be one of the quote unquote one of the good ones, as they say.
Well, we were good friends, and we did a lot together when we went to Bangkok together. We went on extension leave together, and we were always hanging around each other, and so he was a good friend. And then at one point he needed when he was 10 of Ohio, he needed somebody. Yeah, that's at the end of extension leave. We were looking for a barbershop there. He needed an American to go with him, and so I was volunteered to be a strap hanger for him, and he had volunteered to be a strap hanger for me. And then when I ended up leaving RT Illinois to go be a Covey rider, he ended up taking over RT Illinois. So for a short time there.
Wow, I did not know he took over.
Well, he knew that he'd been out with the yards, so he knew the yards, and so it was a relatively easy transition for him.
There's a good photo that one I posted on Twitter that of you and Mr. Lynn. I think Mr. Alan Sammartino's cut out of it, but he's in the other one. But that's a gear photo people will have questions about. But
yeah, that's the one where I was strap hanging with him because he needed another American.
Okay, I was curious about that because it did say combined operation, and I was wondering if you were with him or if he was with you. So
no,
excellent.
He had been with me on a mission earlier, prior to that one, I think, or later, I don't know, somewhere around the same time. But I needed an American at one point, and so he volunteered to go with me, and he needed one, and I volunteered to go with him. So it's just the way it worked. We were good friends.
So that's always interesting, seeing guys strap hang with each other when people are needed and they go to their buddies, and without a doubt, y'all jump in there into the fray with them. I always enjoy hearing about guys taking up the extra spot to go out with friends. It's always interesting to hear that. With that group that you had just mentioned, all of y'all coming into CCC, it looks like most of y'all are immediately put into Recon company. I don't think any of the men you just listed, as far as I know, went to the hatchet forces. What was that like when you first hit the compound?
Well, they all we all were assigned. We all were assigned a recon team. That's what we requested to do. So I went to RT Illinois. I think Harned went to RT Pennsylvania. Ross had gone to I can't remember which recon
Arkansas
team it was, but he went out one time with whoever that 10 is, and he came and talked to me. He said, I'm never going to the field with that guy again. So that's how Ross and I got together. But Nunn was on a couple different ones, and Moss then was on Ohio. He was on Ohio for quite a while, but so yeah, we all ended up in Recon company. I don't think none of the five of us worked with the hatchet force.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. All of y'all, but the time y'all are coming in, y'all are probably needed. All of y'all asking for recon and getting it. So that's always interesting, and especially when you're immediately sent to a team. What was RT Illinois like when you first met the team, met the yards, and got with them?
Well, RT Illinois actually had belonged to John Plaster, but he went home on extension leave, I don't know, sometime in December or something like that. And somewhere along the line, they brought in Ron Weems. He was a SFC who had been with the 101st LERP program. And he was the 10 when I got assigned there. But there was also, so I was actually the fourth American on that team. There was Jerry Paulk, Virgil Paulk, Billy Nubby, Peter Wilson, Fat Albert, and myself. So that was the composition of the team. Now I think Billy Nubby and Wilson were both getting ready to leave to go take other teams because they had been there a while. So, but I think it ended up being Weems and myself and Paul. Yeah, there's Weems and Captain Murkison. Captain Murkison was a recon company commander. He went out with Weems on a mission right before I had gotten there, and a couple of Montagnards got killed. And I think I know Weems got wounded. I think both Weems and Murkison both were wounded.
Two stellar men from all accounts, from what all I've heard, especially Mr. Willie. There's been a good write-up here recently of one of the gentlemen that does, Sean Naylor, I believe. No, I'm blanking on the name, but he did the life story of Mr. Willie from when he was with Airborne, then SOG, the CIA, and I mean he.
I saw something a while back that said, yeah, there's Polk and looks like Bill Curry on the right and
Ronnie Witt in the middle here.
Witt, yeah, okay, in the middle. I saw something a while back on Murkison that they're evaluating his Silver Star or DSC or something like that for a potential Medal of Honor.
Mm-hmm. I've heard good rumblings, especially since they've gotten Mr. Paris Davis his upgraded. Everybody that was working on that, I heard they're working on it for Mr. Willie, so we might get to see another SOG vet with a Medal of Honor,
right?
Which would be outstanding considering all you guys did. Heck, I still say any guy that crossed the border deserved at least a Bronze Star with Valor or something. I'm always astounded by y'all's lack of awards. Even y'all were top secret, but still, I mean, some of the stuff y'all are doing, I mean, deserved more than y'all got. ARCOMs and stuff like that. Not putting ARCOMs down, but it's some crazy stuff I've seen. Guys getting ARCOMs that easily could have been a Silver Star or what have you for actions.
Yeah. Well, one of the negative things about that I've always thought well after the fact was being a young and dumb 1-0. You know, I didn't know the system, and we did things out there, and Dan Ross did things when he was out there. Larry Predmore did things when he was out there. That if I'd have been more aware of how the system worked and so forth, or really had some instructions a little bit more from some other people, I could have or should have written them up for the things that they had done, but ended up not doing it. And the negative thing about not writing up Dan Ross was, Ross ended up getting out of the Army after 3 years, but 6 or 7 years later, he went back in, and went through medic training, and ultimately was in the first Gulf War. So, and he retired as a master sergeant, and I often wondered whether or not if he'd have had a Valor Award or two, or if that could have helped him during his second military career.
Wow, I did not know that. That wasn't listed in Jason's book. That's interesting. I did not know that. That's it's always interesting the hearing about the guys that you saw, guys that either contracted or re-upped. If y'all are still able to and go over during the early stages of the GWAT, that's always interesting, and the Gulf War stuff as well. We've spoken to a few vets that either got out, like you said, or stayed in and managed to stay in that long. Pretty amazing stuff. I was amazed at your record keeping. There's a lot of talking about y'all's weapons, and then there's some team room shots, but it's all of your strap hanging missions, a bright light, which we'll actually talk about here soon. But I mean, that's amazing. I think that's only one pages of it. It's got the rest of the team, but February 10th to February 15th of 71, a whole year of running recon, a few New Hampshire, Ohio, and the rest with Illinois, working your way from 1-3, 1-2, 1-1, and the rest of the time leading the team. Do you remember what that first mission on February 10th of 1970 was like?
Oh, I remember it exactly. I remember it every day.
Wow.
I remember it every night. Yeah, it was. Matter of fact, I had run across a guy who was a writer, and he had something to do with Soldier of Fortune magazine, and he asked me if I had ever done any writing, and I had. I'd just done some basic writing, just kind of jogging things down to, or writing things down to jog a memory at the request of my daughters. And so he said, "Send me what you got." So I wrote up the story of that particular operation, and we went back and forth, and he added and deleted and did this and that, what have you. But ultimately, Soldier of Fortune in the February 2014 edition published that story called my first recon mission. And so it kind of goes over that. What it was my introduction to knowing what it was like to be bait on the ground. Myself, I was a radio operator, and myself and our point man was on one side of the helicopter, and Weems and our M79 man was on the other side of the helicopter. And the helicopter came in, landed on a bomb crater LZ, no fire, no nothing. I mean, we got off, moved over to get out of the way of the helicopter. That helicopter pulled off into the air, and in a surrounding circle around that bomb crater LZ, it took all kinds of fire. So we spent the next couple hours trying to putting in air support. There was a 51 there that they ended up putting napalm on top of for to eliminate the 51. There was fast movers that were in dropping their loads, Cobras, of course, and each time and so that was my baptism to being a radio operator. And I have no idea why Weems did not have me sitting next to him, but there I was trying to figure things out on my own. But the Cobras would make runs and gun runs and so forth, and come in, and the helicopters would try to come in to set down to pick us up, and get shot. And you'd sit there and watch. You could see the bullets hitting the helicopters as it was going on. Coming in trying to land. But I mean, we were the bait. They could have overrun us at any point in time. Every once in a while, somebody would try to sneak through the entanglement of the bamboo and we'd have to shoot them and but they knew they had us at any point in time. What they didn't, what they wanted was to knock down a helicopter, because if they knocked down a helicopter, then that brought in more helicopters. And so anyway, so it got late on in the afternoon, and we had 2 or 3 failed attempts at trying to get a helicopter in to pick us up. And the bad thing was that it now was starting to get darker. And if they hadn't got us out during the daylight, then I mean, there's no way we would have survived the night. And so they made kind of a mad rush of a couple Cobras coming in, flying right next to each other, and rockets and 40 millimeter and shooting. And all of a sudden that helicopter came in and just slammed into the ground. And we ran there and got on, and the point man and myself were on the port side door, and Weems and the M79 man were on the starboard side door. And so we started to pull up, and of course, I think then they realized that the helicopter had actually come in and landed, and they were going to get us. So some started coming through the entanglement of the bamboo. So we were shooting them. The door gunners and crew chiefs obviously were blazing away with their M60s, and we were killing people as they ran toward us, and they pulled off. And I remember looking down, because I'm both of us, the point man and myself, he carried an AK, but he was loading magazines as fast as he could. I was doing the same thing. 20 round magazines. We only had 20 round magazines at that time. And then all of a sudden, as I looked down in the time that it was getting a little bit darker, I looked down there, and all you could see was like twinkling Christmas lights. And I mean, I always think of that. And of course, that each one of those twinkling lights is a muzzle flash that's pointed at you. And then all of a sudden, I couldn't move my left arm. I was trying to replace a magazine and keep shooting, and I couldn't do it. And finally, I looked over at the point man, and he was slumped against my right arm, and then I had to grab him by the web gear to keep him from falling out of the helicopter door. He had a round had come up lower and hit him in kind of around the rib cage and went up into his heart, and he was dead. But yeah, I remember that first mission.
God almighty.
Then we ended up, I hollered at Weems, and we pulled him back in there, and Weems was trying to administer first aid, but I mean, it was too late. He was gone. We ended up stopping at Ben Head on the way back to Dock Toe because they had a medic, and same result. So we lost our point man on that one.
God,
and I still to this day, it's one of those, why him, not me? Why not me? So it's just something. It's one of my guardian angel stories. So
that's
I was lucky that day.
That's for sure, sir. That's a rough way to get introduced into MACV-SOG. That's tough. I mean, you, the radio operator, your first time out, having to direct airstrikes and fight off a onslaught, and I can't imagine. I mean, you literally are getting the worst of everything on your first mission. I mean, hard OJT.
Yeah, that target was Juliet 3, and it was kind of known for its high activity. And less than 2 weeks later, I think we were back in Juliet 3 again. So we didn't have this. And then one of the first missions that I had run as a 1-0 was into Juliet 3. So for some reason, they thought I must like Juliet 3.
Evidently, to keep putting you in there. I mean, geez Louise.
And, each of the other times didn't turn out as bad as the first one, but there was still plenty of people to shoot at.
I can only imagine, especially in your time frame, it was getting extremely hot considering all the movement that had already made its way down the trail. God Almighty, what a first mission! And I believe we were talking about some guys. As soon as you get to CCC, you may be sent to 1-0 school immediately. You may go on a few missions and then go to 1-0 school, or you may not ever go to 1-0 school and still lead a team. You had mentioned that you ran another, I believe you said another 2 missions before you ended up attending 1-0 school. Is that correct?
Yeah, I ran the 2 missions into Juliet 3, and then the 3rd mission I ran was the only Cambodian mission that I ever ran before they discontinued us going into Cambodia. We ended up getting put in the same day that RT Pennsylvania was in trouble, and we hadn't been in very long when I got a message from the Covey writer saying to find some place to hide. And so, with the radio on me, I could hear part of the conversation going back and forth as they tried to maneuver things and get air support and figure out how to get RT Pennsylvania to an LZ. And once it was all over, just my guess based on what I was hearing and so forth, I told Weems, I said, I think they knocked a helicopter out of the sky the way it sounds. And sure enough, they did. We tried to had 3 Americans in 5 yards, and they tried to put all of them on one helicopter piloted by Michael O'Donnell. And he took it upon himself to go in because apparently at one point Lieutenant Poole had told him, if you don't come get us now, you ain't gonna get us. So he tried, but they knocked him they knocked the helicopter out of the sky.
That's terrible. I recently had Mr. Jerry Gazzetta come down and visit. He's from Alabama. He was at CCC, and he was actually on Pennsylvania, and I believe Lieutenant Poole was at the 1-0, Jerry Poole.
I don't know if he was the 1-0 or Baranski was the 1-0. He was either E5 or E6, I think. I don't know for sure. I can't remember, but I think probably Gary Harned was probably the 1-2.
One of them said that we've got enough men. You stay here and look over everything and blah blah blah. And he feels very bad that he wasn't with them that day as well. He is still carrying that and felt like he should have been with his men. So it was he wrote about it in his book and has a lot more details than I've ever read or heard. And it's definitely a sad story. I hate hearing, but like you said, the chopper pilot was doing all he could because he knew if he didn't come now, they'd never get out, and he was going to take a chance to get them out. And sadly, it just did not work, unfortunately. Right. But
he was actually flying chase helicopter. I think the main helicopters had felt they needed to go back to Dak To to get more fuel so they could complete whatever it was they were trying to do, but they just didn't have enough time. So he went in, the way I understand it, he went in on his own and was a valley, and with automatic weapons fire and B-40 fire and so forth. It just took the helicopter out of the sky. It would have been difficult with 8 people. 8 fully loaded people plus the 4 crew members. Them Hueys weren't like Blackhawks of today. You had to be mindful of humidity and altitude and other things because they just they
Not
weren't
the
built
lift.
for they weren't built for the way they are today. So that's why typically uh, the preferred was, or at least my preferred was, 4 people to a chopper.
Wow.
I like going with an 8-man team, so 3 Americans, 5 Montagnards in most cases, and so it worked fine to have two choppers to do that.
Wow. That's and learning lessons like that. Sadly, it's lessons learned from ill-fated events that really solidify those procedures and such as that. You you had mentioned you were in Cambodia, and I can't remember if I asked you this or not, but was this a straight CCC operation, or were y'all going down to try and help CCS fill out some team spots, or?
No, this was a straight CCC mission. Actually, it turned out, I guess all the bad guys were up wherever, because I think RT Pennsylvania went down in Cambodia as well. And so all the bad guys must have been up there, because I think we were in there for 5 or 6 days or whatever it was. And it was actually one of the few dry holes that I participated in. So
Wow,
no,
wow.
we didn't see much of anything there.
Geez Louise, 5 or 6 days on the ground. That's a long time in y'all's time frame. Usually, from all we've talked about, Mr. Howard said they'd be lucky to get a day, 2, 3 tops before trackers or something would get after y'all. So that's amazing. I'm always astounded at how long y'all could snoop and poop and stay hidden and stay in the field like that. Amazing stuff. And some of this stuff, I imagine, because I was asking about the curriculum a little bit. Could you tell us what your experience personally was like at 1-0 school down at Camp Longton?
I don't really remember a lot of 1-0 school for some reason. I don't. It's just another one of them things that
Blurs together,
if I'd
kind
have been smart like Plaster, I'd have kept a journal or written notes or something,
of.
But when you're 20 years old and all your senses are high activity and your brain's functioning mostly the way it should, things happen to you and you go, well, there's no way I'll ever forget that.
Yeah.
And well, when you're almost 75, like I am now, believe me, you'll forget a lot. So I know Moss and I went together, and it must have been around the end of April, end of May, I guess. And it was a 3-week school. So we went down there and then came back. And when I came back and to report into Recon Company headquarters, Mark Daniels, the company clerk, he said, "Congratulations, Keever, you got promoted." I said, "Oh, so I'm a E6 now?" I said, "Oh, no, not that. You didn't get promoted that way. You're now 1-0 RT Illinois." Whoa.
Wow.
In my mind, being 1-0 school does not a 1-0 make. So that's why I looked at Billy Nubby and some others for looking for strap hanging to get the experience. So I wanted to be a 1-0, but I didn't want to be one just then. But it worked. It worked out. So Weems and Paul had left for some reason, family problems, medical problems, something. But they were both gone, so I was the only one left. And in the meantime, Larry Predmore, he'd come in to camp, and he had been assigned to RT Illinois, and they moved. They assigned Jim Jones there for a short period of time. Jim Jones and Bill Scherer, but it was a surprise to me. It wasn't exactly something that I was looking forward to at that particular time.
So when you first get back and you figure out or are told that you're now the new boss, shall we say, of RT Illinois, is there an immediate mission hand down, or do you get a little bit of time to start training as 1-0, or how's that go for
Well,
you?
somewhere in there, I went out with Billy Nubby in New Hampshire as a strap hanger, and then I think we got a bright light assignment. So we were on bright light when RT Washington lost a mountain yard. So Jim Jones and Bill Scherer and I rappelled in to collect his body. We got him, but after that, then I don't know. I think it must have been around June. I'm thinking, or so. End of May or June is when they sent us back into Juliet 3. Predmore and Ross and I went into Juliet 3. Good shout out of that one again. But it was, and then it kind of went from there. Somewhere around after that, I think we did a couple more bright light times up there. Seemed like I got bright light often. I don't know, maybe it, but at one point they were talking about sending guys to Halo school because they were talking about Halo jump, and I said, I want to do that, and so I talked to Recon Company First Sergeant, and he said, "No, you're not doing that." We had an operational team. RT Illinois was operational. We had a lot of other teams that were not operational, and so if you were on one of those teams, you could go do things, go to schools or whatever you wanted to do. But he said, "No, we can't afford to take you offline to send you to Halo school." So, unfortunately, I never got to go to Halo school.
Well, you can also look at that as a bit of a vote of confidence from the Recon First Sergeant that he'd rather have you on the ground running missions than potentially doing a Halo insert. I mean, that's pretty big kudos right there.
Well, I guess so. But if I don't know, so does that mean if I'd have went out there and got somebody killed or wounded, then I could have?
True. And being like you said,
Anyway,
being 20-year-olds wanting to do some crazy stuff, I imagine doing a Halo jump would have been right up your alley.
yeah, that would have been interesting. So
That's
anyway, but
that's
it didn't
wild.
work. It didn't work that way. So anyway,
Um, Gosh, there was one I was about to ask you about with um you're with Illinois. Do you that solid year of running recon, and then I didn't want to get to Covey too quickly, but oh, I know what I wanted to ask you because I literally just got a message saying, please don't forget to ask him about this. There's actually two questions. Um, there's in Jason Hardy's books, there's several what they call the death machines, the M60s that y'all created. One of the guys up north had a backpack kit, kind of like Predator. Y'all kind of have a circular group here.
yeah.
What was the idea behind making the CCC death machine with the
Well,
M60?
I mean, I didn't have anything to do with making that. Uh, Weems somehow when he was 1-0 Illinois, the way I remember it anyway, Weems is the one that had this or found it or traded for it or whatever the case might be. And so what we would do is we'd take it to the range with us sometimes when we're training, but we would take it to Doc Toe with us,
Oh,
just
nice.
when we're on bright light, just in case. Like this picture here with my 2 yards, it's just we're just wasting government ammo here. That's all that is. Just shoot. It was fun to shoot, and yeah, you wouldn't want to carry it in the bush because it was so cumbersome and it was so noisy.
Oh, yeah.
You know, noise discipline was everything in the field, and you know, you can see the way the circular rounds on this thing, and you know, it was always clattering and clanging, and you know, you just I never gave it a thought to take it to the field.
I wonder what the circular thing's made of. I see a handle. It almost looks like it's a pot or something.
Well,
or
it's metal. It was a metal circular case that you could put like 125 rounds or something in there. It actually is a similar design of what like an RPD was. An RPD had a circular magazine, and I don't know what was that, 100 rounds maybe or whatever it was, but it was the same type of concept.
Wow.
And then of course you had the channel, the metal channel there going from the circular drum over to the weapon itself, where the ammo would feed. So it was just a fun toy to shoot.
Oh, that would be a lot of fun, getting to use up Uncle Sam's ammunition like that on the range. That is just too cool. I think I had, yeah, there's a funny picture of it looked like y'all had already burned through most of the ammo right there.
That's Jack, my interpreter, and then Whoa, my 02 tail gunner. Jack, he was an extraordinary montagnard. I was 6'2", and he was as tall as I was.
Wow.
Good guy. He had quite a story even after the NVA overran South Vietnam and all that, of running people back and forth between South Vietnam, across Laos and Cambodia, across the Mekong into refugee camps in Thailand and all that. We ran across him when he showed up at Dan Ross's retirement down in the early 2000s. But
is that the photo of you? Holy goodness, this is making sense. Wow, it is. Eject
Knee.
Eject Knee and Steve Keever looking over old team photographs. Eject Knee was a interpreter for Illinois, now a U.S. citizen, is wearing Steve Keever's 3rd Model 10 vest with a STMP Save the Montagnard at this rally for the Save the Montagnards.
Yeah, that was it like 86 or 87 when the groups had brought some Montagnard refugees there to North Carolina. So Predmore and I went down to participate in that. So, and we ran across Jack and yeah, so we were just kind of talking about old times there. And then we saw him again a few years later when Ross retired. I think that was 02 maybe, something like that. 01, 02, 03, somewhere in there. But I haven't seen or heard from him since. So I don't know. I know Predmore got a call a while back, and somebody asked him, said, "Hey, do you know a guy named David Jackson?" And he said, "Nah, I don't know that name." And then he thought for a little bit, and he said to this guy, he says, "Was this guy a Montagnard?" And the guy yelled at somebody else, said, "Hey, was that guy a Montagnard?" And I said, "Yeah." And so, but I don't know where he's at. We've lost track of him, but he was pretty fluent in English, and he had a nice little family there, and with a wife and a couple kids. So hopefully he's doing well.
Wow, hopefully so. I was surprised when I first, and especially when I went to SOAR and contributed, I was surprised at how many Montagnards were still in North Carolina. That's very interesting. I actually got a Montagnard bracelet made for me for my donation that they sent to me after doing a show and a contribution to them. So
Uh-huh.
I've got that put away for very safekeeping. I won't ever wear that. Um, wow, that's so cool. I'm glad I asked you about that because I was wondering if that was the same person you were speaking about from the photo. And two more questions concerning, shall we say, attire and some weapon stuff. Everyone is always curious, as I was the first time we spoke. Um, could you tell us? Oh God, the weapon thing is going to point out. Well, let me find your war medallion. People are always asking about the SOGmen and y'all's war medallions, and you had mentioned that y'all kind of had a friendly jeweler or a connection in, I believe you said Bangkok,
Right.
and y'all would just go down there, get them made, and whatever designs y'all wanted, kind of going.
Well, the war medallion itself is a pretty basic design, but a little bit bigger than a $50 or so. But and then it came with like a regular small chain, but a lot of guys, including myself, would buy bigger chains, bigger gold chains to put it on. It was a little easier to do then when gold was $35 an ounce than it would be today. So, but yeah, I had a baht is a unit of measure in Thailand, and I had a 4 baht chain, and others had bigger and others had smaller. So, and uh, depending on what I was doing or where I was going, I guess I would wear that war medallion on the different chains.
Hopefully, I don't get a copyright strike. I'll give Jason kudos in the book, but just so y'all see,
Oh, yeah.
oh, wait, there's him swimming with his war medallion, the cutout instead of the solid piece. And then there's Mr. Steve looking good with that gold chain and his war medallion right there.
Yeah, the swimming part, the river ran down at the end of the airfield there at Dak To, and when you're on bright light and everybody else leaves and goes back to the compound, then we'd go down there and swim in the river, clean up a little bit, or throw some grenades out in the river and let the Montagnards grab
No
some
fishing.
fish and have a little something different to eat than rather than PIRs or sea rations. So that was all good.
I always enjoy hearing about y'all doing some grenade fishing. That's always
Yeah.
fun to hear about. Um, One question when I was sharing, letting people know, because people are about to start asking about gear. Let me find your souvenir photo. Um, I believe it's a Soviet PPSH and maybe a S. Is that
SKS. Yeah.
SKS? Did you pick these up in the field, or were these just around the compound?
No. We that was one particular mission. Our actual mission was a POW snatch,
Oh,
and we had gone into this particular target and set up. We walked around till I found a trail that looked like it had a little bit of activity to it, and we sat up on here. We had trained prior to this mission with concussion grenades and so forth on how we were going to approach the snatching of a POW, and the um, the mission ended up being we stayed at a spot for a couple of days. We moved and moved around and found a different trail, sat up on that one. That didn't work, so we moved and found a different one. And by this time, it's about, I don't know, I'm guessing 5 or 6 days, something like that. So I was on the radio to Covey requesting an extraction. I said, "There's nobody down here."
ooh, hang on one 1 second, guys. He'll join us back in just a moment. We've got a few good more stories. I hope we can keep him on this time. But if we have to do a part 2, we can. But because I've got some good notes written out. But hopefully we can get him back. We'll just hold still. Yeah, Daniel, I said the exact same thing when I first heard that. I was like, you clearly were meant to do something else, or else it would have been you. But you can see how upset it still makes him. And you can imagine as close as he got with his men, both American and Indige, that, oh, here he is. There you are.
I'm sorry. I don't know what, it just goes off. So I apologize.
It's perfectly fine, sir.
Oh, the POW stand. So anyway, I'm calling for an extraction. We had I had 10 men on this one. I had myself and Predmore and Jack, the interpreter. We were kind of sitting in the middle. Had Phil Grant as side security. Paul Boyd from RT Montana. He was with us on that one. Him and a Montagnard on flank security. Dan Ross, another Montagnard in the back. So we're sitting there and of course it's kind of back and forth on, get me out of here. No, you gotta stay. And what? Well, and Predmore and I are, we're just sitting right next to each other. He's my radio guy and he's always on my hip. So I happen to look off to the right and I see a guy walking through the woods. But he's not walking down the trail. He's not anywhere close to the trail where we have things set up to try to snatch somebody. And I look and I keep looking, and pretty soon I'm counting 8. There's 8 guys that I see before the guy right directly in front of me stops in mid-step because he sees the claymore wire between me and Predmore and the claymore wires that we had set up on the trail. And he looks one way, and he had a rather shocked look on his face when he looked back the other way, which was the last look he ever had. But anyway, we fired up those guys and we got ready to move out. And I said, we moved off a little bit because you never know in a situation like that, is this a point element for a much bigger group or, so we moved off a little bit, tried to get a smoke up through the triple canopy jungle that didn't work very well before Covey Rider finally saw it and was able to give us a gun run or so while he's calling for assets to come in. So I said, we're going to go back through. And that was not a popular decision among anybody. We had, there had been some rumors, innuendo, whatever, that certain teams would fabricate contacts in order to get pulled out, particularly if they were told to continue mission. And I thought, there's no way that I'm going to subject this team to a suspicion of fabricating a contact. So we went back through and got a few things off by. These were just 8 mopes that were just walking through the woods. And so, I picked up 2 of those Peppershaws and 2 SKSs, and I ended up, going through what I needed to go through as a war trophy to bring it home, and I still have it in my closet today.
Wow, that's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. Beautiful weapons. My dad had an SKS he brought home from the Marine Corps that he got off someone.
Yeah, I mean, I've never tried to clean it up, never tried to shoot it, never anything. You know, it just
Keep it historic like that.
yeah.
That's amazing. Wow. And speaking of rumors of guys not wanting to go on with the mission, when you hear that ill-fated phrase, break contact, continue mission, in your time in the 70s, 70, 71 time frame on the ground, we've always heard rumors from the CCC guys and some of the northern guys, Chinese, Russians maybe being on the ground. Did you ever come across any
No,
Caucasians?
I never had that experience. I know others did, but no, I never saw any of that.
Wow. It's always been interesting to me where they pop up. You know, some guys have seen people on elephants, you know, looking clearly not North Vietnamese, maybe Chinese or even Russian. And see, I think some of the Cambodian guys even came across a Chinese way down there. I mean, I've always found that interesting when people say that they weren't in combat roles, but clearly some of the SOG guys came across them carrying weapons and acting in combat roles. So there were we had already been asked, and I could not remember from reading the book. Before I get to that, people with historical gear questions have two questions. We were kind of under the auspices that you helped create the patch for RT Illinois. Did you help create, or did you get them made while you were on R&R?
I don't really remember. I mean, I guess so, because I think this was a later version of the patch. There were a couple other earlier versions. I don't know. I can't really remember that. It just, I mean, it's there obviously, but I think maybe what happened was I definitely had when I had gone to Bangkok, I had some made. You know, they were always good about that sort of thing, and because the yards would like to have, they wanted them, and you know, and the other Americans that you had on the team. So, but as far as the creation of it, I don't know. I can't remember that part of it.
Y'all definitely had some artists in the group for the guys that actually made their own patches, as opposed to copying some of the original bomb burst patches. You know, guys like RT New York, California had a good one. Heck, Illinois has a good one. I'm always surprised to see how artistic you guys were, as well as being great soldiers. Could have had a second career being artist or comic book drawers.
Well, that artistic part of it was lost on me, because I can't take any credit for that.
I can support that as well. My handwriting's barely legible, so I'd hate to see me try and paint or draw something. And this was going to get into, before we start talking about your Covey side of things, because we're already an hour in here. I didn't realize we had gotten that far in. There's two photos. One is, I believe, the combined operation with Mr. Sammartino and Mr. Lynn Moss. People were wondering that this is not what you wore every time. I've seen a different photo, but could you kind of explain what your normal go-to was? Always using a Car 15, Claymore vest on the chest, 1-0 vest. What were you using for your gear?
I loved the Car 15, so that was my preferred go-to weapon. You know, other people had different ones they preferred, but you give me a Car 15 any day. We you know, up until maybe half the way through my time in Recon, you know, all we had was 20 round magazines. And I think I think John Plaster was the one, or somebody came across somebody who would if we could buy and send us 30-round magazines. So he went around taking orders, and we ended up with some 30-round magazines eventually. But we ended up buying them ourselves.
That's crazy.
But yeah, I like the idea of the Claymore. What I did was I cut the encasement there and either stapled it together or somehow, I think, stapled them together so that, when I put my rucksack on, all I had to do was just pull it up over my head and it was down on my chest if I needed it. And of course I had some det cord, a blasting cap that obviously was not inside the Claymore until I would have needed it. As it turned out, I thought I was going to use it one time. I was trying to get ready, but I couldn't get off my rifle. And so I had an avenue, and so I took it, and I ended up not putting it down. But, and then as you look at it on the right side, that was a gas mask. And of course we had the snap links up there for if you needed to come out on strings. The gloves were, I had sent to me from home. They were handball gloves, and I painted them black. I cut the fingers out and then sewed the ends together to keep them from fraying. But I like the handball gloves because of the padding in the palm of the hand, because you get your hand down on the ground if you're crawling around through wait-a-minute vines and what have you. It had some protection for your hands. The rest of the web gear, really, the web gear was a pistol belt built around a stable rig, and you had canteen covers, which you kept your 20-round magazines in there. Usually carried 22 of them, and you also had grenades, smoke grenades, whatever, also in there as well. And any extras that you might need, you carried in your rucksack. Had pockets on my field pants for map and survival radio and that kind of stuff that I carried on me. And then of course had to have water in there somewhere. I never liked wearing a hat. I was never a hat wearing guy, so you don't see me many times with a hat on. So I don't know what else would have. Well, medical kit that we carried. I had the watch that I turned to the inside to keep those watches that were real luminescent at night, and I always wore mine to the inside to keep the light from shining. What else is on there?
What color uniforms would you guys favor? OD, black, or?
Mine were OD with and spray painted. They weren't a solid black. You'll see those pictures of me at Docto. I had a solid black pair that I typically wore up at Docto on bright light. But mission fatigues for me were the regular OD jungle fatigues, and then I used black spray paint to break up outline and so forth as a camouflaging technique.
Wow. And let me see. I know there was something else somebody was going to ask me. If I don't ask it, they're going to kill me. I've got another. Ooh, let me bring this up because I think we've gone through this photo. 1-0 vest or Air Force survival vest. Mr. Lynn was known to wear one quite a bit. did you ever wear the quote unquote 1-0 vest when if you ever got your hands on one, or did you just like the gear
Well, I
you
wore
set up?
one when I was flying Covey, but I didn't. I didn't wear one in the field. What you see there is basically what my attire was when I went to the field.
Okay, and I think I've
And then you
actually.
had you had what we called an indige rucksack. It was, no framing to it or anything. that that particular Predmore took that picture. That particular picture was taken after either 5 or 6 days in the most miserable, cold, wet environment that you could possibly be in. I had immersion foot.
Oh.
I could barely walk. As it kind of looks like right there, I was pretty well pissed off the entire time, and I was just. We had been wet. They put us into that target, and it started raining, and it was either 6 or 7 days later that before they could get us out because it would never quit raining. And yeah, I was a mess. I was a mess on that one.
We've heard from a few guys, especially CCC men, about the immersion foot and you guys getting caught in the rain and being rained in for 6-7 days, and them literally having to cut the boots off of y'all when y'all get off the aircraft because your foot's so swollen up and the skin will just peel off like a potato skin.
Yeah, I was. I don't remember having cut my boots off, but I know I was on crutches for probably a good 10 days after that. After that particular mission, I just my feet were so sore, so messed up. It just it's painful, very, very, very painful, and it's swollen to the touch, and I mean there really isn't anything you can do for it. It just dry them out. That's about all you can do. But it was a time where I mean we were just a mess. It was only that was just a 6-man team on this particular one, Predmore and I, because Ross had left and he was going home. So it was just Predmore and I and 4 mountain yards. And we'd sit there in the rain during the day or walk around in the rain and just be miserable. That temperature get down in the 40s and what have you, because this was in an area that was probably the highest target area in our AO was out up across from what was it, Doc Peck. There was 3 A-team, Ben Het, Doc Siang and Doc Peck, or Doc Peck and Doc Siang, whichever it was, was out across whichever the most northern A camp was up there, and it was real. It was more of a mountainous type area, and you'd try to sleep at night, and you'd have to straddle a tree to keep from sliding down the hill. And oh man, it was that wasn't much fun.
Oh, you definitely show the looks that it's not you're not having a lot of fun right here.
No, that's no fun on that one.
I see you've got your canteen pouches set up for your ammo. We asked the guys because some guys did, and then some guys said they never ever even thought about carrying one. Did you happen to carry a pistol on your person to where if you ever had to shed gear, you'd at least have a pistol? Or
once in a while I would carry a 45. Now Predmore, he carried a Browning high power, and he's a pistol guy. He don't want to go anywhere without a pistol. So, I can't basically depend on the target, I guess, and whether what I should have had was during that POW snatch, and I don't think either one of us had one, but I should have had a silenced 22 or something. might have been able to successfully pull off that POW snatch, but things kind of happened quickly after the guy took a look and decided he was stepping across a claymore wire, and after that it went south for them pretty quick.
Jeez Louise, yeah. I can only imagine, like you said, that last look on his face, knowing he stepped in a boo-boo, so to speak. We had 3 questions on what you had just spoken about, and then we'll go to the Covey side of the house, and we'll let you go. We won't try and hold you for 2 hours here today. Let's see.
Hey, I'm just an old retired guy, so you can do whatever you want to do.
I appreciate that, sir. Buddy Galil Hub of my, he is wondering, what was the most impressive piece of enemy improvised equipment or infrastructure that you encountered either in South Vietnam or in Laos? I'm presuming he's meaning.
Improvised equipment, infrastructure. I don't know. Well, you know, they were pretty good about, particularly when you're along the trail, they were pretty good about building bunkers and places for them to hide. We one particular mission, I was we were trying to get around to a certain area, and I couldn't find a place to get in between. They were kind of channeling me and so forth, and we come upon this bunker complex, which is always that's always a nervous situation to begin with, because you don't know who's in there. And as it turned out, these were there weren't too many of them, but they were vacated. So we kind of sat there, and I talked to Plaster, who was flying Covey, and requested an extraction. And we were not in a spot where he could get to us right away. And he said, well, he said, you got people all over down there, and I can't move you to an LZ. He said, but I got a plan. I said, well, okay. So his plan was, he's sent a helicopter in, and they threw a ladder out, and all we had to do was just go right over the hill, and we're standing on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And so Moss was with me on that one. Moss and 3 Montagnards scurried up the ladder, and away they were gone. They sent in one more helicopter, and the 2 Montagnards I had left with me, they scurried up there, and Woody was with me at that time. Of course, Woody weighs about 350 pounds when you put full gear and RPD and ammo and everything else on him. He climbed up far enough to hook himself into the ladder, and here I am, skinny ass little me, down there flopping around like a flag in a hurricane. And but anyway, it got us out, and we were able to. And I gave Woody hell. I've given all the way up until he died a couple of months ago. I was still giving him hell about that particular issue. But anyway, he was a good man.
Wow. That's wild. So Mr. Woody liked to carry RPD on occasion?
Yeah, he carried the RPD. That's why I kept him on the ground with me in case we needed him, with he and I and 2 Montagnards. So yeah, he had an RPD with him at that time.
Wow. Yeah, it seems like you CCC guys, Ed Walkoff, Larry Nixon, now learning Mr. Woody, Mr. Woods, and a few others. Y'all really put those RPDs to work out there. I always enjoy hearing about y'all requisitioning one and SOGifying it, if you will.
Yeah, he cut that pod off of the end of it and make it a little bit lighter anyway.
That thing, I've heard at nighttime breaking contact, it would look like a flamethrower just slinging fire out the end of that barrel.
I imagine so. I never saw that, but I would imagine that would be the case.
Oh man, Yes, Sean, you're correct. Mr. Eldon, not often, but he carried it on several occasions. He earned his Distinguished Service Cross with an RPD that day.
Okay.
Um, oh, interesting. What were your favorite alert rations to eat? Were any decent? Did you eat them dry, or did you have to add water and put them in your pocket to get warm?
Well, my preferred breakfast was peaches and pound cake from C Rations.
Nice.
And then in the morning when we wake up, uh, I typically took enough. We called them PIRs. They were something indigenous rations. They were the dehydrated rice in a sleeve, plastic sleeve, and you'd put. They had shrimp and mushroom, or they had other meats that you could put in it along with seasoning and so forth. Um, and they would. I would. They're meant to be used with hot water, but of course we didn't have any hot water. We didn't cook any water out there, so I'd put I'd fill the sleeve up with water in the morning and put it back in the rucksack. And by noon, when we sit down to take a break, I'd eat half of it, and sometimes it'd be crunchy, and sometimes it wouldn't. And then in the evening, I'd typically eat the rest of it. So I never really felt too hungry out there. Never. Plus, I guess one point when I first got on RT Illinois, Weems was telling me about the contact that they had been in, and he had two of his mountain yards went out to do their business,
Oh.
so to speak, and both of them ended up getting killed.
Oh.
And or at least one of them got killed and one of them wounded, one of the two. And for whatever reason, that mentally stuck in my mind that I wasn't going to do no business in the field, and I don't believe I ever did. And I never really felt all that, all that bad about not doing it. I just thought, no way do I want to get literally caught with your pants down. So
No.
just didn't happen.
We've heard of guys taking stop up pills and all of that, because I'd probably have to do that, because the moment I would have been on the aircraft and going in, I would have immediately gotten fear guts and would have had to go and find somewhere to go to the bathroom, or not eat
Yeah.
for a while, because as soon as it gets high pressure, my stomach is the first thing to go. Oh man. And yeah, I don't see how you guys did business in the woods like that. I mean, I hear you got to do what you got to do, but geez Louise, like you said, I would not want to be out there and get snake bit or get caught with my pants down. Oh man. Oh wow, I haven't seen this name in a while. Was Mr. Norm Doney still at CCC when you were running Recon?
He was. What was he was?
Recon First Sergeant, wasn't he?
Yeah, but I'm not. He either was just on his way out, or I can't really remember. I don't. He might have been just on his way out. I mean, I remember him, and I know of him, but I don't remember him specifically as being Recon Company First Sergeant. But he may very well have been.
He by that time he had been there, I think 2 or 3 years, so he probably was on his way out there about that time. So we've had a guest on, Mr. Joe Wilson, in 68 or 69 when Mr. Norm was still running Recon before he did the Recon NCOIC. But yeah, by your time he was either gone or probably about to head out.
Yeah.
Getting to Covey after this question. Did in the 70s, in your time frame, were y'all seeing any armor at that time, either across the border or in South Vietnam, that the VC or NVA were moving?
I never did know.
That's
There were times, I know Ben Het, Longvay, there were places that were attacked by tanks, but I never saw it during my time. No.
Oof. Yeah, I can only imagine what that must be like, especially when you're in your camp and you see them busting through the gates like at Lang Bay. That had to be just an absolute nightmare. God Almighty. Okay, so you run Recon. I think there we saw for a little over a year, maybe a year straight, and then what is shall we? I guess the word would be the impotence of you transitioning over to flying Covey with Mr. Plaster and Larry White and the guys.
Well, I had by this time, end of February, 1st of March, I had run Recon for 14 months with RT Illinois, and one day Larry White, six pack, approached me and said, "Hey, we need a Covey rider. You've got the experience. You interested?" And I thought, man, this is just too cool. This is, here I'm an E5. Most Covey riders are 7s, 8s, 9s, or 7s or 8s, or officers, and here I'm a 21-year-old E5, and I thought, man, that's quite an honor. I was very humbled to be asked to do that, and then spent my last 5 months in country living with those guys, Lowell Stevens, Larry White, and John Plaster, and being a Covey rider.
I believe we've got pictures of everyone listed. Oh gosh, Mr. Woody's at the country club in this photo. There's Mr. Steve over here.
Yeah.
Mr. John Plaster, as y'all know.
Plaster, Woody, and myself. Yeah.
Great photo, and of course, got to have the skulls and the bomb burst logo on the window.
Got to have our motif there to.
And I've got a few photos of the out of all the bars and all the places that y'all had a heck of a. There's the other guys.
There's Lowell,
Emmett Dover,
Lowell Stevens, Larry White, Emmett Dover.
And I'm not sure where that is, if it's outside the country club or the barbecue area.
It doesn't look like it's in the country club, but it could be. I can't tell where it's at, but those are three legends.
Oh, to say the absolute least. Yes, sir. Let me bring up show y'all's decorations. Folks always get a kick out of what the country club looked like, and I've got, well, don't mind that up there, guys. I'll cover the ladies, but there's Colin Covey. He actually uses the F word, is Covey around. Got y'all's booze and refrigerator and cooking, and I can see why y'all always had good get-togethers at the country club. Yeah,
we it was a gathering. It was a gathering point for a lot of cases. It was kind of like an after-hours club, I guess. The club would close, and they'd there's the front of it, and so usually, a lot of guys, particularly like when Stevens and White had been in country for years and years, and they knew all the old timers, and so when an old timer would come around, they'd come to the Covey Country Club, and you could just sit and keep your mouth shut and listen to some great stories. And then every time, we had a great group of pilots that flew for us, OV pilots, O2 pilots. And whenever they were getting ready to leave, we typically have a party for them. We get a bunch of liquor and throw together jungle juice and have quite a time. But it was a tribute to them for everything that they did for us in our program.
We've gotten a few photos from some of the, was it the 20th task that flew with y'all?
I think it was. I think so.
We've got a few photos that they sent over. I don't have them downloaded on this computer, but they've got a few photos of them in the country club with Mr. Larry and Mr. John Plaster hanging out with them and pouring some drinks. There's another country club shot with Mr. Larry and Mr. John back there.
Yeah.
So and a thing that's I've always been not astounded at, but amazed at. I think I mentioned it when we spoke that there was really no Covey training. You were on the job training. You get in the sky and start learning. You had mentioned you were a great map reader, and that's one of the things that seems vital. I mean, if you can't read a map, you're going to have a hard time, and especially having good eyesight as well to see not only the tracers, but being able to identify SOG men versus the NVA. I can't imagine what your first Covey flight must have been like, but could you kind of walk us what it was like? Though, dang it, we just lost him. We've got about 30 more minutes because Fat Albert and Fred Krupa go missing when Mr. Steve is flying. So we'll cover that, and we'll see about getting him back on. And I think I've covered most everything. I've got some notes, but I'll make sure. We'll let him reset up here. Got some sapper attack photos, and here he is. Let me get him on. There we go.
Sorry about that.
You're fine. We've only got about 20 minutes or so left. Could you kind of let us know what it was like your first time and getting kind of immersed in the world of flying Covey?
Well, I'm hearing that echo again. If there's something,
let me turn that off.
Anyway, the initial training was done in O2 because the O2, you sat pilot on the left side, co-pilot on the right side, and then there was a seat in the back. So the initial training was I'd sit in the right seat, and White or Stevens or Plaster would sit in the back, and we'd fly all day like that. They'd tell me what I should be looking for and so forth. I guess I was fortunate to, for some reason, I have a pretty good idea about reading a map. And if you couldn't read a map, you weren't going to be a Covey rider. I can tell you that. So, they would just coach you and do this and that. And, on insertions, extractions, you'd communicate with the aircraft. Covey riders communicated with the rotary wing aircraft, and pilots communicated with the fixed wing aircraft for air support and so forth. So, and then after, I don't remember, maybe a week or maybe a little bit more until they felt like you had a good handle on what you were looking at, and then you start riding in the back seat of an OV-10. So that's only two-seat aircraft. So you weren't going to have a teacher in there with you. So the O2 was okay, but the OV-10 was just so much fun to fly in.
And that's the one where you're in the back seat, and it's almost looking like a mini jet, if you will, attack aircraft.
It was a totally aerobatic airplane. It could withstand like 7 or 7.5 Gs and all that kind of stuff. And I know the very first time when I was flying, and pilot come up there, and he put about 4 or 5 G's on me, and all the blood in my head rushed down here, and I'm graying out, and I can't figure out what's going on. So anyway, he told me what I needed to do to overcome that. And so it was all good.
Wow, that is crazy, just crazy. You had mentioned learning on the O2, and you mentioned front seat, right seat, and then occasionally in the back. We've heard some stories of the SPAF guys who were operating forward drum. There'd be a joystick in the back, God forbid if the pilot went down, to where they could fly and maybe land, hopefully. But we've also heard tales of some of you Covey riders, if teams couldn't get on station, fixed wing or rotary wing, that if y'all carried a Car 15 or grenades, which we've heard some guys carried satchels full of magazines and grenades, that y'all would hang out of the window and do simulated airstrikes with Car 15s and grenades. Did you ever do anything like that?
I never did. I always had my Car 15 with me, because anytime I ever rode in a 01, the SPAF planes, it was typically, we did our VRs. We did, as a 10, we did visual reconnaissance and picked out our LZs in the backseat of a SPAF. And you never knew when those pilots were going to put themselves in a situation. One particular time, a SPAF pilot, I picked out my LZs, and we were kind of flying back toward the FOB, and he was flying fairly low, and he came across there. He said, "Looky there," and I looked out, and I could see what he was talking. There was you could see a bunch of people and equipment down through the jungle and that. So I marked it on the map, and we flew out away and gained a little bit of altitude and come around there, and he said, "You see where it's at?" And I said, "Yeah, I got it up there." It said, "Wait," I marked a landmark for it. So he gets a little bit of altitude, and he comes down there. You can almost run faster than those damn planes can fly. And so he gets a little altitude, and he comes in. We're coming in there, and pretty soon he shoots a couple rockets at it, and then all of a sudden there's green tracers going everywhere, and he goes back around again to do it one more time. And I said, I think those are just little sheet metal. They're not going to stop anything, if they happen to hit the wrong spot. So he did it one more time, and I said, well, it's a good thing that we're ready to head back. Well, and he come across another SPAF pilot, and when we landed back at Khartoum, because the other pilot had said, you might want to get out and look at your tail rudder. So we get out there and look, and there's a nice, perfect circular half-inch hole through there. So they had been shooting at us with a 51, and so
God
anyway,
almighty,
those were not exactly the best planes to be pissing off the enemy troops down there. So be different if you're in an OV-10, where you could get some speed and rockets and M60s and what have you. But
that was literally a question that just came up, asking if you enjoyed the OV-10 more because you could actually do strafing runs and rocket. And this question was, well, when you were on the OV-10, would y'all only mark targets, or did y'all actually go in and strafe with the M60 and the rockets?
Oh no, we would do gun runs. That if the team was in trouble and they marked their position and gave us azimuth and distance, then no, we would do, because OV-10 had what I think 4 rocket pods, and they'd have HE in some and Woolly White Phosphorus in the others, and then they had 4 M60 machine guns on them. So we would do a gun run, because if we were calling for air assets out of Docto,
It's
it
gonna be
would be a
45
while
minutes.
before they got there. So in many cases, it was, the team wanted you to provide whatever air support you could until, reinforcements got there.
Almost a necessity from the sound of it. I hate to jump back, but Sean was curious. We've heard a lot from folks talking about the counter recon MVA teams. Did you ever encounter those guys, the sappers or the hunter killer teams that were after y'all specific SOG men while out in Laos and Cambodia?
Well, all the NVA were looking for SOG guys. I mean, I know there's probably different statistics out there now, but a very large percentage of the NVA in that particular area, their whole mission was to come across recon teams. They had LZ watchers, they had trackers, they had, they were always, the bad thing for us was that it was hard to mask a Huey helicopter. I mean, you hear them depending on the direction, you can hear them coming a long way away. And I mean, these guys know where the LZs are. So if you got a Huey helicopters in a particular area, they've got some kind of idea where they think that you're going to go, unless you do some maneuvers to try to do false inserts or false extractions or something like that. But all the NVA were always looking for recon teams.
And that kind of ties into what I was going to end up getting to here in just a second. But false insertions, but also as you were a Covey writer, could you we're jumping ahead and we'll end up jumping back a little bit before we end, but about the importance of keeping double books as a Covey writer?
Well, it was actually important keeping toward the end of my recon tenure. It was also important to fake your RON locations and so forth off by 150, 200 meters, because by that time there was so much skepticism about who's a mole, where's the mole. There was so many weird off the wall things going on. I've seen things where people said that they claimed they went into an LZ and they heard NVA calling their name and things like that. So you never knew who the good guy was and who the bad guy was. So we did that, and then one of my first few missions of flying Covey was in an OV-10, and by this time the A1 pilots were Vietnamese. The A1s were piloted by Vietnamese pilots, and the process was that if you called for A1 pilots and they came out to provide you air support, and yet you didn't use them, they didn't want Vietnamese pilots returning to base with full load. I mean, A1s carry a tremendous load, CBUs and napalm and whatever else. So I needed to look for a place for a couple Vietnamese A1s to expend their ammo. Well, I wasn't very far away from a spot around the river that they called the Boot, where Predmore and I and Grant had been run out of there a number of months before. So I knew there were some bad guys around there, or at least there were. So I had them go in there and expend, drop their load on there, and went back and didn't think anything about it. Next morning, I get called into the colonel's office. Apparently some ambassador or something had called up through channels and wanted to know who the hell gave authorization to bomb this particular area and blah blah. And I said, well, there's an after action report of such and such a time. Just check that out, and you'll see that there's bad guys in there. Well, and then as a result of that, what I found out from Plaster, White, and Stevens was, he says, "No, dumbass, don't tell them the true coordinates. Make something up in an area where it's okay." So from then on, I made up, if I was going to drop something on somebody that I knew wasn't supposed to go there, then I would fake the. I hope the statute of limitations has run out on all that by now. But
Oh yeah, yeah. Heck, we're way past that. I mean, yeah. You're not expelling any secret info. Heck, we've had some guys share some pretty crazy stuff that, oh no, we lost him. We got literally two more people to talk about, which could take about 15 minutes, and then I'm gonna get some of y'all's questions answered about the Jasons and Mag 325s. But we'll see if he served with Sammy, because he could have crossed paths in Thailand or wherever. But Jason's got a good one talking about the bright light. Yeah, Parent Tom, we got a man down. He keeps taking fire, and we have to bring him back. Here we go. There you are, sir.
I wonder what the problem is there.
We'll be done. We'll be done here in about 10, 15 minutes. So okay. It ought to not be bothering us anymore. I can't even remember what we were talking about then, but
false coordinates.
False coordinates, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Some of the things people have been reading about, and then Jason brought up from when we first crossed paths on Twitter. He was curious about hearing about, even though we're going back now to when you were in Recon, he'd like to know what it was like listening to the radio at Dock Toe with Fred Morris in RT, Alabama, running around alone thinking he was dead before Plaster found him. And what that was like when you finally saw him coming in on strings.
Well, yeah, that particular day, that was Thanksgiving in 1970, and then there's 2 or 3 days in there that were high pucker factor days. It just Morris's deal ended up being it came over the radio that the team was split, and the initial report, I believe, was that they thought that Morris was dead. Mm-hmm. And so Plaster was trying to figure out location and this other stuff from the other team members, and they ended up getting the helicopters out there. But in the course of doing that, then of course I was preparing my team to get ready to do an insert once we got the information that we needed in order to try to go find him. Well, then all of a sudden, as we're sitting there getting ready to go, then Plaster finds him. I don't know, pen flare or something comes up, and ends up finding him, and was able to put a helicopter down there to bring him out. And he had it's a wonder he was, he had a hole right in the middle of his forehead. Had taken a piece of shrapnel or something in there. Of course, he had blood all over his face, and probably a concussion and whatever else was going on with him. But, fortunately, he was cognizant enough to be able to hook himself into the strings, and they were able to pull him out. And then we got done with that one, and then we had another recon team that got in trouble, and they had American. He ended up getting killed, and to this day, I still don't know. The 1-0 of that team was a total freaking moron. and something happened. Covey couldn't get the information necessary from him to get locations and so forth, so we could saddle up and go out there and retrieve him. And as far as I know, I don't. Maybe they found his remains years later, but they never. But that 1-0 never ran recon, as far as I know. Never ran recon again. Mm-hmm. And then the next night, we're messing around out on the tarmac there, and here comes Predmore walking out of the ammo bunker. He's got a case of claymores in each hand, and this is not looking good. I said, "What's going on?" He said, there was a hatchet force. I think it was a hatchet force platoon. They had been in trouble for a while, and their platoon leader had been wounded, and I think they got a medevac in to get him out of there, but they didn't have another platoon leader to put in. And they had a platoon sergeant who said, "That's all right." I said, "I got this." Well, by later on in the afternoon, they decided that they were going to put my recon team in to support this platoon that was just getting the snot kicked out of them. And so here we are. We load up on helicopters. Predmore's, of course, sitting right next to me because he's got the radio. And by this time, it's getting late in the afternoon. And so here we go. We're going out there to their location. And, of course, now it's more dusk than it is light. So you have no problem at all of seeing the explosions, the green tracers going one way, red tracers going another way. And I'm thinking, there's no way I'm going to live through this. They're going to put us down somewhere, and we're going to have to fight our way in. We're going to have to fight our way in through the NVA. We're going to have to fight our way into an encampment of hatchet force people who don't know us. We don't know them. There's just nothing good was going to come out of this, but we were going in anyway. And that was actually the scariest bright light, non-bright light mission that I had. It was, and we were flying around in circles, and Predmore, like I said, he had the radio, so he could hear some of the conversations and everything else. And I'm looking down there and seeing everything that I'm seeing as we start to descend a little bit. And pretty soon, Predmore's slapping me on the shoulder. He's got a big old grin on his face, and he puts a cut across his throat. So they had called it off. Somebody had decided that might not be the best strategy. So we didn't go in. But the next morning, they took hell all night long. And the next morning, the platoon sergeant, a sergeant by the name of Bean, he's the one that says, "I got this. We're good." Predmore and I unloaded his body off the helicopter the next morning, put it in a body bag to take it to Pleiku. So he didn't make it, but we'd have went, but we didn't. We didn't have to.
God, those bright light stories are just heartbreaking, and the men that step up without any question or hesitation, like you and the other guys at Dock Toe on duty, y'all should feel very proud and satisfied, because there's not many men that would jump in a helicopter to go in somewhere where they know helicopters have just been shot down and their men are killed or about to be killed. It takes special men like you SOG and SF men to do stuff like this. It's just, I'm at a loss for words every time I hear stories like this, to be honest with you. Wow. We've got a few questions, but our last two right now for you, and I can't remember if this was during your recon or Covey, so I'm sorry for flipping back and forth on you here, but One was I can't remember chronologically either. Fat Albert and Mr. Fred Krupa. Were you flying Covey when both of these gentlemen sadly were lost?
I was flying Covey when Krupa was lost. Uh, I was not. I was still a 1-0. I did fly. I did fly in an O2 or in a SPAF. I don't remember which one, but after he was lost, we kind of had a rotation of different 1-0s who would get in an aircraft just to go out and to see whether or not we could get an emergency radio signal off of him. And we never found one for Fat Albert. And I can't remember for sure. I think I inserted Krupa, and then Plaster came and took over for me shortly thereafter. Once we found out, or we may not even know that he was out of the helicopter. Then there was some communication issues and radio was gone and what have you. But yeah, I was flying Covey when Krupa went missing.
Both of those stories, especially this is the last known photo of Fat Albert and Mr. John Grant at Dock Toe, and that's a very sad story, but it also shows the love and dedication that you men had for your Montagnards and your Indige soldiers, because he was not going to leave his Indige alone to be captured or either be killed. And sadly, he wasn't able to fight it off and get with the rest of the team and paid with his life as well. And that's just another thing that shows what makes you SOG men so special. Just putting it all out on the line at any given moment. I mean, literally. God, that almost makes me cry right now. To further close up, we had one more question about an interesting photo that a viewer sent me, and I believe it's in Jason's book. And I have out of all my time looking at Contoom stuff, I've never seen this and was curious. Where were you with a quad 50?
Is that me or is that Nunn?
Oh, that may be Nunn. I can't.
I think that's Jim Nunn.
Dang, that's so bad.
Yeah.
Clarity.
I don't know.
It says Steve Keever, but I swear.
Well, I may very well. I could have taken the picture.
It does kind of look like Mr. Nunn with his head. Not saying it's weird, but he's got a particular head that kind of pokes up a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's Nunn. But this thing was around somewhere. I don't know, because I have some other pictures of yards standing in the same place like where he's at there, and even ones that maybe I'm up there where he is. I don't know, but to me that looks like Nunn.
Yeah, I'm beginning to agree with you now as we're looking closer and not seeing Illinois patch like you have on normally. So
right.
I'm inclined to think you are correct, sir. We may have to have you back one day if I have forgotten anything, but there is one more question to close with right here. Speaking of on the ground, this altered a lot, Sean, through the years, but he's wondering for you, Mr. Steve, what was the typical SOG mission day count? Was it 6-7 days? And then how long would it usually last?
I think we usually planned, or I carried enough food for typically for 6 days.
Wow.
Very few of them ever lasted that long. Hell, some of them only lasted a couple hours. And then some of them would last overnight, but yeah, the the typical one, I think for me, was plan for 6 days, carry enough food for 6 days, and if you're out there for 6 days, okay. But most of them didn't last anywhere near that long. Like I said, between the NVA, who were always looking for you, the trackers, the sheer numbers that they had, if they wanted to incorporate, masses of people to look for you and everything, then it was hard to stay away from them.
The leaks at that time, it seems like they were waiting on every SOG team. Maybe not every time, but they knew where y'all were from the leaks and from the John Walker spy ring and all of that. I've recently been reading about him and his family giving everything and all y'all secure encryption devices straight to Russia and all of that. And it's just absolutely no wonder that they knew where y'all were at any given time.
Yeah. We had one particular insertion, and it was a elephant grass LZ. And as we're coming down, helicopters hovering, getting ready to, preparing to get ready to get off, all of a sudden the elephant grass parts ways, and there's two young men's faces looking at us. Well, that was the last thing they saw too. So, it happens. Like I said, you had LZ watchers, you had people who were tasked with chasing you around and trying to capture you. Allegedly, if they caught a SOG guy, then they were heroes and money and everything else. So.
Oh man. Wow. Yeah. We've heard a few stories of SOG men and ambushes going through info and all of that and digging through. And I think it was Mr. Phil Rice and Ray Harris at the golf course. They killed a NVA courier, and he actually had a one of the medals that is basically an American killer medal, and they promptly took that from his remains and took it back to Khantoum since he didn't need it anymore, of course. Well, I think we've gone 2 hours and 10 minutes, and I don't want to blow our welcome here with you on our first show in case we want to have you back to talk with us sometime, if you'd be open to it, of course.
Sure.
But I think we're ready to shut her down for the day. Is there anything you'd like to share with us or say before we close out?
No, I just want to thank you, and I appreciate you, Jason Hardy, and doing what you do to keep the history alive. Us old bastards are losing our memory and our minds, so it's hard. Some of this stuff is hard to remember details. So, just thank you very much. Thanks for having me, and hope your audience enjoyed it, and I appreciate it. I'll make myself available if you decide that you want me to share something else. So I'll be good. Thank you.
Absolutely. We've I think this has been the highest view count active participation that we've had on a show. And I think at one point in time it was up to 45 or 46. And that's just with people with accounts. So this got a great reception. And I can go ahead and say I think this has been one of our best interviews and best chats thus far in the year and a half we've been doing this. And everyone's saying thank you in the chat and saying, yes, please get him back for part 2. It was excellent. So, guys, that was Mr. Steve, his part 1. If y'all got any questions or can think of anything here soon that we'd like to get him back to talk on, we'll set that up and have him back to come chat with us. He's open to. So you guys just let me know, and I'll get in touch with you, Mr. Steve. I've got some photos that'll be in the mail heading your way to get your John Hancock on to where I can add those to my little library. So
will do.
I will be in touch with you here soon. And everybody, y'all have a great day. And we'll be in touch whenever we get a show coming up. I think the next one's next Monday. So we'll We'll see y'all then.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye.